Hello everyone, Nick here with Salmon Slayers TV, back to you with another video. Today we're going to be going over summer bass fishing tactics. I know we don't get a lot of bass fishing in our summer schedules, mainly focused on summer steelhead and salmon in the Sound, but I'll give you a quick rundown on what we know just to help you bass fish them out there. So first we'll talk topwater. My favorite way to catch these critters. One of the best ways is to run a straight braid to a frog. They come in lots of different color variations. This right here is a bullfrog color. This is natural frog. And then you have the albinos, which can work very well on overcast days. So with that being said, you're usually gonna run a minimum 40-pound braid with these because you're gonna be reefing them through some lily pads in the thickest of brush that other lures just can't do. And if you have an opening or like a little bit of weeds, but you're not gonna be snagging every cast, I prefer to go with something like a popper because it's just not natural for a frog to be places where the lily pads aren't. They're not going to swim out in the middle of nowhere unprotected. So like a wounded bait fish, popping that, walking it across the top, smallmouth will go crazy for those, and I know largemouth do too. But my most favorite topwater lure of all time is by far, where is it? The Whopper Plopper. You can't have any weeds on the top or you're going to get snagged almost every cast, but what is happening is this tail's kicking and rotating as you're reeling it in, and that's causing bubbles and all kinds of stuff to happen in the water. And they'll usually come up and you'll usually get them on the back hook because they'll try to bite from behind. But don't be afraid to throw magnum baits either. Magnum baits equals magnum bass, and we all want bigger bass. So I like the black bait for when it's really clear water. It gives you more natural presentation. You can throw white in dirty water or something like this with a little something for them to key in on. That can be good. And these are some older style lures. I don't know if they're still making these, but they call it the jitterbug. It just walks back and forth like this in the water as you're reeling it in. Has some little weedless feature. I've had really hot days for smallmouth on these, so don't overlook it. Next thing we'll go to is our soft plastics. Everyone knows about the Senko, so we'll talk about that first. And Senko, you're basically, first off, this is one of the best colors. Green pumpkin seed with a red flake, the 5 or 6 inch. That's where you're going to get most of your bass on in the summer, honestly. There's a lot of different other color variations. And these pinks, they do look silly, but yes, I've caught bass on them. Stocked farm ponds, though, so it is what it is. But dirty or murkier water, you're going to go with something that, it doesn't make sense, but it just works this way. If you use a darker one with some blue flake in it, they can really key on that. It works really good. And how you hook these up is the flat end. If you look at your Senko and you turn it, one side actually has a little bend to it, and that's what you want facing down. So you're going to take your worm hook, usually 3 or 4/0 for these 5-inch Senkos. I'll show you a Texas rig or Tex bows. You're going to go about 1/4 inch down into the plastic, come out. This is to hold your bait straight on the hook. And then you're going to want to look where your hook would be coming through. And then if you don't have many weeds, you can just leave your hook out like that. So when the fish bites, and you'll feel it, you'll set the hook right into its mouth. Or if you got lots of weeds, you can just pull it forward, barely hide the hook in that, and you aren't going to snag weeds very often. Now this, if you're fishing really clear water, you can throw some fluoro, but braids are always preferred with baits like this. They're going to be going through weeds. And don't be afraid to branch off a little bit from the standard. Like I took this Senko, shortened it up, took some scissors, cut this way and this way, made some little appendages. I'll wobble on the drop. I like to use this with, I don't know if I have any in here, but some form of bullet weight. And you can either peg the weight so it's immediate contact, or you can have it slide to give you a little play. And I've had killer days for smallmouth on these, so don't be afraid to throw natural either in rivers that have smallmouth, or on just super clear waters. You see any on beds, sometimes I might pick those up. So that's some of your soft plastics you got. Other soft plastics, you got the Zoom Trick Worm, kind of like a Senko, just a little thinner profile, has a little bit more tail to it. Here, I'll pull it out and show you. Just a different style worm, flat, rounded on the top. And yes, these little changes to your bait can actually make a difference in your bites. So if you're not getting something every 30 minutes, and it should be a time where fish are biting, definitely change your bait up. Because it's what you got to do. And you got the Zoom Brush Hog. You got the Mini Brush Hog. And they're finicky biters. You got your Reaction Innovation Beaver Tail. These are a bait I just love because you can throw them about anywhere. You can use them as a trailer behind your jigs, and they really have just a lot of movement. You tear this apart, the appendages, you'll jig this up and down, and these will just flap and drive the fish crazy. So this is definitely probably my favorite beaver style bait right here. Then again, black and blue for really sunny days with not many clouds. Oh, let's see. We can talk spinnerbait. This isn't really a midsummer thing. This is more late, early spring, depending on where you live in the country, obviously. Western Washington, this is probably more of a late spring thing. This is a really good color for smallmouth. I know the all whites can work really good. And something you can put on these, what I like to do is I'll put a Kitech on it. So not only do you got the blade, but then you got a little paddle tail on it too, which can be a nice good touch. Speaking of Kitech, swim baits, my favorite hook to rig up with these is the Owner Beast weighted hook with the little spring clip. Let me tell you, these springs, you will not rip any heads on your Kitechs anymore. The only way you should be ruining these is when fish bite, when you get these Owner Beast hooks. And these things, you don't want to spend a lot of money on swim baits and not get a quality hook. You want to put a big, strong hook right where the fish's mouth is. Moving on from there, my favorite way to go for bass, obviously not the most productive, but when you're talking big fish, we talk swim baits. This right here is a Savage Gear trout swim bait. It rolls back and forth. You can rig it belly so it looks like it's dead. You can rig it from the head. Fishing beds, this can be very productive. The bass might think the trout's coming in to eat its eggs or its baby bass, so that can be productive. And a lure not many people talk about is actually the weedless swim bait. Because of course, swim baits can catch big fish where there's not many weeds. But if you want to throw in weeds, I suggest going out there and getting a Huddleston weedless shad swim bait. All it is just a weighted hook. When they bite down, the hook point's right there waiting for them. The whole thing is it's weedless. You can throw this just about anywhere you'd throw a Senko for the most part. And let's talk jigs. These are more for under docks. I really like these. Try to stay toward the naturals with maybe a hint of something for them to key in on, but the black and blues is probably my favorite color for jigs. Back to swim bait, these shad patterns, they're cheap. They're Savage Gear, just little shad, but these can be productive when you see lots of schools of shad swimming under your boat. And go out there and get yourself some spring locks, so when you're rigging up your plastics, you don't have to keep ripping them through the hook, Texas rigging them. Obviously for Senkos you wouldn't use it. For those beaver baits, Definitely give yourself some spring lock heads. Oh, let's put all this back real quick. Moving on from there, we have our crankbait, jerkbait style lures to talk about. These can be a very good method when all your grass lines are the tops of them are all about the same level underwater, and you know how deep your bait's going to be diving. These are great to throw off rocks because they'll just bounce off the rocks. They won't snag up. They'll cause a lot of racket and really get the smallmouth. They might not even be hungry. It might just make them angry sometimes too. But the blue backs, these tend to be really good patterns right here. So definitely that. I don't know why I keep these in here, but these are called rage toads or whatever. You can hook this up just like a Senko. To expose, you can burn them across the top. You can let them dive down. Basically another form of a frog that can go subsurface. So when the bite gets finicky, or you might want to catch trout in addition to bass, this can be a nice lure to throw. These little Rapalas. Shallow divers, they'll float when you stop reeling them in. So you reel them in on the crank, you can stop. Gives a nice injured bait fish presentation. Then we can talk jointed crankbaits. These add that little extra action when these just aren't enough to get them to bite. So that's about all I throw for bass. I don't know if you guys know any other essential baits for the summer, but with that being said, I hope you liked the video. Stay tuned for more action, probably more salmon and steelhead stuff, but with that being said, tight lines, don't forget to like and subscribe.